Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole bringing you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time you are watching this live. Hello, crew. Hope all is well. So, I must say, Bloomhouse has another great series. They're doing their thing with their actual like unscripted department, because I thought for sure, because they did a great job with Get Out. Bloomhouse is the one who produced Get Out. I thought for sure they were going to stay on the scripted side, but now they're doing unscripted with Worst Roommate Ever and now Worst Ex Ever. Excellent. Like every episode, I am into it. My jaw is dropping. It's amazing. It's amazing for all the wrong reasons, but it's still amazing. And I thought, because I've actually seen all the episodes for whatever reason, like during this weekend, I kind of just went through all of them. This is the first episode, and trust me, this is not the worst episode, okay? But like I said, I'm going to go through every episode. And this episode for Worst Ex Ever, season 1, episode 1, is called Dating the Devil, okay? And that's truly what this gentleman was dating the devil, okay? So if I had to rate this episode, it's an A. And honestly, I don't even like to rate this episode, like their episodes, because every episode is a great episode. So you might as well just say their whole entire series is an A. So with that being said, we start off with a woman who I thought was the victim. Okay. Her name is Angie. But what we find out is she is actually the victim's friend. Okay. And she sits down and they ask her, does she want to hear her 911 call? And she says yes. So what we have is Angie, which Angie right here is the one to your actual, to my right. She actually is the one who is Angie. She's the one who called, and she said that her friend is saying that she thinks she needs to go to the hospital. So she received a call from her friend. Her name is Justine Siemens. And she says, my friend called me saying she thinks she needs to go to the hospital. Well, come to find out, Justine called Angie's mom and said she feels like she needs to go to the hospital. And Angie's mom says she doesn't sound right. Okay. So luckily, woman's intuition, I'm glad it kicked in. And not to mention, Angie is a true definition of a really good friend. She decides to head over to Justine's house while she's on the phone with 911. And so at that point, she tries to get into Justine's house and she says she can't get in, which is weird in itself because she never left her doors locked. She was always able to get into her house. So she's going around the house trying to find a way to get in. Next thing you know, she hears Justine screaming. All of this is going on while she's on the phone with 911, the dispatcher. And so she's like, Justine, I hear you, honey. I'm coming. You know, the ambulance are on their way. And so she's panicking, of course, because she hears her friend. She says she hears banging, and she's thinking that Justine is like banging like her hand or something against the wall to kind of alert where she is in the house. So with that being said, while she's panicking, she said, next thing you know, the garage door comes up. And at that point, she's like, how did I miss this? But the garage door opens up, and next thing you know, Ben Obadiah, whatever his freaking middle name is, Obadiah, I think is the middle name, Foster, comes out, and she says he's just calm. And she's like, what is going on? And he's like, oh, Justine is having a heart attack. And she's like, having a heart attack. Why didn't you call 911 or call anyone to, help her? And he said, well, why don't you go in there and check in on her, and I'll get the car and we can take her to the hospital. That's what he tells her. Okay. And of course, she goes in because she's worried about her friend. And Ben escapes and he leaves in the car and he takes off. She goes into the house and she sees her friend badly bruised up. There's red sauce everywhere. You already know what red sauce is on this channel. Red sauce everywhere, and she has a noose around her neck. Okay. So trigger warning, because some of this stuff is going to get vulgar. So she has a noose around her neck. And at that point, she's trying to ask Justine what happened to her. Did he do something to her? And at that point, they show that this is January 24th, 2023 in Grant Pass, Oregon. And this psycho, Ben Foster, is the one who did this to her. And the police come right away. And so when the police come, Angie is telling 911 that, or the police, that Ben has a bad record in Las Vegas. He's known for doing this to people, women to be exact. And so my first thought when I'm seeing the first 15 minutes of this episode is, okay, so is he on the run? And he was on the run from Vegas and moved to Oregon. Also, if she knows this information, why would her friend be involved with a man like this? These are the first thoughts that are going through my head when I'm watching the episode. And so at that point, there is a statewide search for Ben, because they're on the alert about, what he did to Justine. And if he's willing to do this to Justine, no telling who else he's willing to hurt. So that is the beginning of the episode. And then, of course, in normal fashion, they take us back to the past. And then all of a sudden, we're going back to June of 2012. Now, Justine, as you can see in this picture, beautiful girl. Beautiful girl. And so when we go back to June 2012, we see another beautiful woman, a beautiful sister by the name of Amber. And Amber is from Las Vegas. Okay. One thing about this crazy mofo, he was able to get beautiful women. And so Amber said she met Ben at a hotel. They were working in the hotel industry in Vegas. Very common. The hotel industry is the industry in Vegas. And for whatever reason, one thing I've noticed about both the Roommate series and the X series, there's several things that are similar. It takes about a year for them to show their true colors, and they have an obsession with dogs or pets. I don't know what it is, but if you notice, for people who faithfully watch these shows like I do, you always hear a year, and you always hear that they're loyal to pets. Don't know why. Quite interesting. I would love to do like an evaluation on that as to why that is the case. But she said they dated for a year before they moved in together. She said at first he was very sweet. And, for some reason, that 1 year mark, he becomes a little psycho. But at first she said she did notice that he would be very uncomfortable around people and even standoffish. And she said that he became very jealous at one point because she mentioned how she was still in contact with her ex. I guess her ex was a foreigner. I guess she used the word that he's a foreigner, maybe because of the fact that he didn't really understand the English language that well. He just needed help with something. Now, mind you, she said that her ex was in another relationship, was engaged, but Ben didn't like it. And she said he started questioning her, and the questioning became very intense with an intense tone. And at that point, she was just kind of like, okay, this is getting weird. But she said it's interesting that he started questioning her because she ended up finding out that Ben, during this time when he was questioning her, he was seeing his ex behind Amber's back. So you know that old thing where when someone is questioning you, they're questioning you because they're also hiding something. That was the case with Ben. Now, with that, this was in 2012. She said Ben is originally from Oregon. So now we know why he was back in Oregon when he did that to Justine. And she said that he had an obsession with steel. And what is steel? You already know what steel is. And not just that type of steel, but the pokey steel also. To me, those are red flags. Like, you may have someone who may have one or two, but when they're obsessed with it, to me, that would put me on edge personally. So by November of 2014, she said they got into an argument. And she said, out of anger and was trying to poke at him, that she threw away one of his new pieces of steel that he bought. And next thing you know, he became Ike Turner. Okay. And make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in. Hello, hello, hello. But yeah, he became Ike Turner. And so at that point, I guess she knew at that point. Look at this picture. Like, they looks like a really cute couple. But again, looks can be deceiving now, can't they? Very deceiving. So she said at that point she knew he was not the man that she knew. And next thing you know, he's, DVing her. And at that point, she ended up running out of the house. She called the police. They put him in jail. But he's just ordered to take DV classes and community service. That's it. So then when he gets out, he goes on to his normal craziness and he begins to stalk Amber. All right. After he gets out. So clearly that didn't do anything. The class is the community service. So here we go with people not paying attention, the law not paying attention to what's going on and how it leads to something that they could have avoided. So by September 2015, she was on her way home and she said it was raining. And all of a sudden, when she pulls up to the house that they once shared, she said Ben gets out of the car in the rain and he's screaming at her, banging on her car. She's telling him to leave. And she's just like, he just looks insane. And so he gets in his car and he drives off. She says she waits 15 minutes making sure the coast is clear before she enters her house. She said when she enters her house, she goes to her closet. Ben was in the closet and he ends up literally wailing on her. Okay. He is like going in, wailing on her. He ends up taking out a pokey, trying to go to her face, but she puts her arm up and he ends up getting her finger instead. And so at a certain point, he ends up pinning her down. It was just graphic based on what she was saying. And she said that she eventually had to crawl up under the garage, run to the leasing office so they could call the police. And interesting enough, y'all not going to believe this. She goes to the leasing office and call the police. The police come, they go back to her condo to question Ben. Next thing you know, they come to the leasing office and they arrest Amber. Why did they arrest Amber? Well, according to Amber, Ben ends up taking the pokey and scarring his own face, saying that she was the aggressor. She initiated all the drama, and they believe him. And I wonder why. Maybe the complexion for protection. They don't look up anything. They don't do a background check on them. They just arrest her. So while she got red sauce all over her and she's bruised up, they handcuff her, take her while Ben stays in the condo. And so she's literally in jail for 18 hours. 18 hours. Then when she faces the judge decides to actually do her job, unlike the police. And she ends up looking up the charges and seeing that he was arrested prior for DV. And it was DV against Amber. And she dismisses the charges because she simply did what she was supposed to do, which was some research. So she gets out. She says when she gets home, he takes everything out of her house. Everything. So security stuff, everything, including her drawers. Yes, her panties. He takes even her panties out. Everything he takes out of the condo. Okay. So this has been situation when it comes to Amber. Now, this was from 2012 to 2014. Then we meet Jamie, okay? My guess is Jamie is a Hispanic woman, a Latina woman. She is also from Vegas, okay? And again, she has this cute dog named Maya. And like I said, I don't know what's up with these psychos and dogs and animals. And so they met at a martial arts type of class and they became friends and then they got together. Well, with that, it's interesting because they keep going back and forth between Amber and Jamie. And my guess it's because there's probably an overlapping with both women. Ben seemed like the type that he would go back and forth, and whichever woman was willing to take him or let him stay there, he was willing to do that. So we get an introduction to her, but back in December of 2017, which is like 3 years after the incident happened between Ben and Amber, like a dumbass, meets with Ben because Ben contacts her and says that he's been in therapy and he's trying to apologize to all the people that he's hurt in the past and to have closure. And she says she admits that she pretty much, was feeling bad for him, even though she's the victim. And at that point, they became friends again. And for whatever reason, he was at her house Christmas Eve, which that further tells me Ben probably didn't have a place to stay. So that should have been her first sign, because if he was really there to just apologize, he should have his own life. He definitely shouldn't be there during Christmas Eve. But he was there during Christmas Eve. She says she ends up leaving out of the room. She ends up getting a text on her phone. I guess he looked at the text, didn't like what he saw. Next thing you know, I guess he flips over that. She ends up coming back in the room and he immediately starts to choke her out. Okay, until she's unconscious. And she wakes up and she sees that he is around the house punching the walls, like just doing all of this crazy stuff. And she ends up having to jump off of her first floor balcony. She ends up finding a stranger who is driving. She has no shoes on. Luckily, the person stopped for her, because if I can be honest with you, if somebody's screaming trying to tell me to stop in the middle of the street, I'm not stopping. But luckily, this lady did stop for her and let her in her car. She calls the police and at that point reports to the police, like, he did this to me again. And at that point, the police officer that came to Amber's rescue pretty much told her, you cannot be around this crazy fool anymore. Like, he could have easily, unalived you right before Christmas, not around your family. Like, you need to just let him go. So Ben ends up going to jail again. And they finally pressed charges, but she said they took their time as far as, taking him to trial and things like that. So at that point, she just felt like, they were not taking her situation seriously. And clearly they were not, which is why Jamie, in December of 2018, Ben ends up losing his job and moves into Jamie's house. All right. Now, mind you, that's a year later, December 2017. That was the last time he put his hands on Amber. December 2018, Ben loses his job and moves in with Jamie. So again, I think there was an overlap between these two women and probably other women as well. So he ends up moving in with Jamie and, she's taking care of him. And Jamie said that they were dating around a year. Here we go with that year again. And things started to go crazy. He started putting his hands on her. He started doing the DV. And they weren't even arguing. She just said he would randomly just start doing that. And she said he was also very paranoid, always thinking people were trying to get him. And so at that point, by September of 2019, she was still dealing with him. And he had DV'd her multiple times. And she didn't tell her friends because she said she was scared and embarrassed to tell them. And she said there were times where she would stay in a hotel just to get away from him. Mind you, it was her house. She was paying the bills. Her dog was there, but she was that paranoid, that scared, of course, because she didn't know what he was going to do. But at the same time, didn't want to tell anyone. And this man is staying in her house. So finally, she gets a restraining order on him. and the police were going to go and serve him. And she said, well, what if he's not there? And they was like, well, if he's not there, we can't do anything. And she said, well, can you at least escort me in my house, like, so I can get a couple of things or whatever? And they said, oh no, we don't do that. Like, if we serve him or we try to go there to serve him, he's not there, you're kind of like shit out of luck and you're on your own. So they end up going to her house. Ben doesn't answer. So she ends up going into her house thinking that maybe he's just gone, ends up falling asleep on the couch because she was just that drained, that tired, that paranoid, of course, worried about everything. And the next thing you know, she wakes up and Ben is on top of her. And he has locked her arms up. And he begins to shave her head, shave all of her hair off. And while he is shaving her hair off, he says, no man will want you. Now, one thing I've noticed is that it seems that he had a history of trying to permanently harm these women so they could be unattractive in some way. Like, for example, Jamie with her hair, or Amber, he was really trying to take that pokey to her face. So he was really trying to do permanent damage to these women. For what, like, I definitely wish they could have did some type of psychological study on him. But yeah, so he was permanently trying to do that. And so at that point, when he did that, she said she was just crying and she froze because she didn't want him to go for her face. So she did say, though, while he loved her dog Maya and like really took care of Maya, she said she would notice there would be times that he would physically be there, but mentally he wouldn't be there. Like, he would just like just be gone and thinking about other things. So she saw certain signs that just kind of could tell that he wasn't normal. But again, she ignored the signs just like Amber ignored the signs. So at that point, after he shaves off her head, he holds her. He K-naps her pretty much. And y'all know what that is. She can't go anywhere. And literally at that point, even she said when she would be asleep or they would sleep, he would literally have her bound in some kind of way or have the steel to her head so she wouldn't go anywhere. So he literally held her for 16 days. And at that point, after 16 days, her credit cards were maxed out. They had no food, they had no water. And so they eventually had to go to the grocery store. So the little heart, I guess, that he did have when she said that they need to get food for her dog, Maya, he was like, all right, let's go. So she ended up driving them to the grocery store. He said Maya had to go to the bathroom. So he takes Maya to go to the bathroom. And when he's taking Maya to the bathroom, she immediately dodges and runs into the store and begs for help. And so at that point, she goes like a back way and ends up finding a guy who is like, are you okay? Do you want me to take you to the hospital? So she ends up, being taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, he has the dog the whole entire time. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is he about to do to this dog? But when she's at the hospital, find out that she has broken ribs. She has damage to her eyes. Like, it was just horrible, and the type of stuff that she went through for those 16 days. And so at that point, I guess once they saw what happened to her, because she was scared, because she was like, the police is not going to do anything. Well, at that point, SWAT, police, the news, everybody was at her condo, child. And everybody was at her condo. They even put like tear gas in her place to get him out. Hey, Yuli, to get, him out of her place. And so he comes out with Maya, the dog. And I was like, please tell me the dog is okay. Because as much as she said that he loved the dog, to me, he's crazy enough to harm the dog also. But he didn't harm the dog. We do see the dog in the actual episode, but doesn't mean that something didn't happen to the dog and the dog just got better. But the dog was unharmed. They take the dog from him and give her back to Jamie, and they end up arresting Ben. Okay. At this point, this is like the third or fourth time this fool has been arrested. So when they arrest him, They tell Jamie she has to testify. Jamie doesn't want to testify because at this point, Jamie is like, you have all the proof you need. I do not want to be in the same room with him. I do not want to relive this experience. And you have the pictures, you have all of that. What do I need to be in there for? So, because they said that she did not cooperate, they cut him a deal. Okay. And they cut him a deal where he gets 30 months in jail. However, he gets credit for over 700 days served. So the amount of days that they gave him credit for as already served was like 2 years worth of credit. So technically, he only spent about probably like 8 more months in prison and then he was out again. Mind you, the 30 months combined Amber's DV charges and Jamie's DV charges. Okay? Both women's situation combined, he really only spends 8 months in jail. Yeah. And he's released October 2021. And then 2 years later, hell, not even 2 years later, because what happens to Justine happened in January of 2023. Okay. So literally, Las Vegas screwed not only these women, but what happens in Oregon less than 2 years later. Okay. And kudos to Angie, Justine's friend, who was a real writer. You got to love people like that because, you know, she literally could have just been like, oh, she's okay, or I got my own stuff to do. Like, she went to go check on her friend and she stayed by her friend's side. She was still crying in the episode because it just really affected her that badly on what happened to her friend. So at that point, when he does that to Justine, all hell breaks loose in Grant Pass, Oregon. And they act immediately. Why do they act immediately in this situation? Now, here's the thing. One can say maybe things like this rarely happen in Grant Pass, Oregon, and that's why they acted, because they had never seen anything like this before, versus Vegas, where you have like DV situations all the time. But being the person that I am, I think also it was a complexion for protection. Because here you had this white man who literally abused a black woman in Vegas and what appears to be a Hispanic woman in Vegas. And he kind of just gets a slap on the hand. But Justine is a white woman. Okay. And when it all boils down to it, when it came to that white woman getting abused the way that she was getting abused, and that white woman calling 911, screaming on the phone about her friend being abused, I think that also played into it as well. Just saying. And y'all can let me know in the comment section what you think about that. But at that point, it was a manhunt for him all over Oregon. Okay. And so they speak to Ben's parents because Ben is actually from Grants Pass, Oregon. So he went home. And interesting enough, when we hear the audio of him talking to his parents, they're not really shocked to hear about Ben because they kind of tell, they tell the police asked them questions and they said that Ben came 8 p.m. that night before and he was kind of frantic, like packing up his stuff. And they were like, well, are you about to move in with Justine? And the police was like, well, not to go into that much detail, but Justine is in the hospital and she's hurt badly. And they were kind of like, oh boy. Oh, well, it sounds like the same thing that happened in Vegas. That's how they just say it. Like, that's the response. And the mother is like, I don't know, like something snapped in him and it really breaks their heart. Like she was like, something snapped in him and it really just breaks our heart. And I'm thinking, I don't know if something snapped in him or you were ignoring signs that were already there. I don't know. Something tells me like if we really go back into the history of Ben, even in like elementary school, middle school, high school, maybe there was some signs there, but they're just kind of nonchalant about it. However, Ben's brother ends up calling Jamie because of course they can't find Ben at that time. So they don't know if Ben is still in Oregon, if he's going back to Las Vegas. So the brother calls Jamie crying and actually, apologizing. Because one thing about it is I'm glad they at least didn't defend him. But I guess the brother at one point did defend Ben and called Jamie and told her that Ben is on the run. He may come back to Vegas, so watch out. And that he's sorry that he didn't believe Jamie. But he has done the same thing to someone here, and he just wanted to make her aware of what was going on. So both Jamie and Amber are freaking out because they didn't really know if he was going to come back to Las Vegas. Now, some lady apparently was helping Ben like a dumbass, and the police are questioning her. And she said that, she right now was just more concerned about her dogs that her friend Richard was taking care of, while she was, being questioned or while she was away from the home. Now, Richard is an older man. And next thing you know, when the police go to check in on Richard and to question him, they find Richard and his caregiver unalived. They're gone. Okay. And at that point, they realized Ben had been there, and they have been, I want to say DV, but they have been abused very badly. Like they were, and pretty much they were unalived. So now it's not just him being a DVer, he's an unaliver at this point. So now things have escalated. Okay. Two people are now gone because of him. So at that point, for whatever reason, like a dummy, but I'm glad he did this, he ended up going back to Justine's neighborhood. And so the police officer put two and two together and figured that he was going back to Justine's house, maybe to get something or whatever the case may be. So he get all the manpower he can, police officers, everything. And they pretty much kind of like sit out there, tell him to come out. They end up going in the house. They don't find him, and they think it's a failure. Like, oh, I thought he was here. They spotted him, but he's not there. But they didn't check one place, but the dog did, under the house. So the dog ends up sniffing it out under the house and ends up seeing movement down there. Ben is under the house. Okay. He is under the house. Now, my thing is, of course, y'all already know the type of dog lover I am, animal lover I am. It's funny because they said that he had a white dog with him for whatever reason. When he's always in these situations, it sounds like he has a dog. Where that dog went, I don't know. They don't mention the dog, but what we do know is they said he's under the house and he has the steel pointing at the police. All right. And so they end up, pretty much telling him to come out. He doesn't comply. He doesn't do anything until all of a sudden they hear a bang. And y'all know the bang that we talking about. And like a coward, Ben unalived himself. All right. So they hear it. They take the cameras down there. They see that he's injured. They don't know how severe until, of course, they bring him out. He's gone. All right. So they don't get any answers. Nothing ends up happening. He was just a coward who unalived himself. So at that point, in my opinion, sorry to say, that's good news. But in better news, the whole entire time we're hearing Angie. Now look at this situation with Ben. Look at these different pictures of him. Now that should tell you right there was something mentally going on with him. Because that last picture where he literally looks crazy with the beard and all of that stuff, that's when he had got arrested, I think, after what he did with Jamie. So like you can tell just by these pictures, he was slowly like going downhill mentally. It's to me very obvious in these pictures. But with that being said, and even Angie said he was like people were saying he was a coward for taking himself out. Angie was like, he's where he needs to be. And I agree with that. But we end up finding out that her friend Justine is still alive, which that was the best news ever. So then we get Justine's story about her and Ben. And her and Ben, they weren't really together based on what she's saying. Now, she did mention she had a lot of brain damage based off of what happened, but she said she had known him for about 2 months. They worked together. She said he was super nice. Um, and she said that one day, though, he asked for clean urine because he needs to do a urine test. And her antennas kind of went up and was like, people don't ask for clean urine unless they're like in some type of probation situation, something is going on. So she Googled him and ended up finding all of that drama that happened in Vegas, which is why Angie made that comment earlier in the episode saying he had did this before in Vegas. Clearly Justine told her, what his record was in Vegas. So what Justine did was she went to go tell her boss because her and Ben were together. She went to go tell her boss fired Ben. And Ben knew that he got fired because of Justine. All right. So at that point, she stopped dealing with him after that, especially once he got let go and she found out his history. But the next thing you know, she goes home. And Ben was hiding out in her garage the whole entire day. And when she gets home, he does the same thing he did to Amber and Jamie and held her 4 days while he pretty much DV'd her. And then, of course, how for whatever reason, by the grace of God, she was able to call Angie's mom to tell her she needed to go to the hospital. And Angie's mom knew something wasn't right. And that's when Angie came to the house. I think she saved her friend's life. Like, honestly, had she gotten there later or didn't take it seriously, I don't know if Justine would be here. And Justine even said that if it wasn't for Angie and Angie's mom, I wouldn't be here. She has severe brain damage. She said she had to learn how to walk again. He punched out all of her teeth. You know what I'm saying? She's grateful to be alive. But Amber also said, they said, look, had Vegas taken this seriously, my claims and Jamie's claims, our pictures and everything else, we probably wouldn't have had a Ben going to Oregon and doing what he did to Justine and unaliving two people. And I agree, to the point where even the production contacted Las Vegas Police Department to ask about Ben Foster. And of course, they declined to comment. They had nothing to say. Just damn ridiculous. If I were them, I don't know if it's possible, I would sue the damn police department. I would sue them because that's ridiculous. Like two different women, two different occasions, all this proof, and you just let them go. And you can't tell me that's not the complexion for protection. Sounds like it to me. Because guaranteed, if it was a minority man, or it was a minority man, especially doing this to a white woman, or a minority man just doing this, period, he would have been under the jail. But that's my opinion on the situation. Really good episode. What I am happy is that we actually have all the victims in this situation, except the two, unfortunately, in Oregon. But the women victims, they are still alive to tell their story. Because we clearly know, especially in worst roommate ever, a lot of them didn't come out to be able to tell their story. Their family members and other victims were able to tell their stories. In this situation, we had all three who had DV situations with him be able to come out and tell their story. So that definitely made me happy as well. So that was the first episode of Worst Ex Ever. You guys definitely let me know in the comment section what you thought about this episode. For those who have not seen this episode or this series yet, highly recommended. While I highly recommend it, I know it'll scare the hell out of people, because I know I was just looking at this situation like, damn, like you just can't trust anyone at this point, whether you trying to be with them or have them as a roommate. Like, people are crazy nowadays. So with that being said, you guys, thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you hit the like button. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Toodles.